Welcome to this technical exchange. My name is Paul Brett and the subject of this video is Beginner's Guide to the ITX Launcher. In this video I'm going to walk through the steps to get a simple series of maps executing in the launcher on file-based events. I shall use the Integration Flow Designer to create a system containing source maps, compiled maps and subsystem components. Then I will configure some launcher settings, including time and source events, start, stop and to control the launcher on both Windows and Unix. Finally, I will demonstrate the use of the launcher monitoring tools to monitor map activity. The launcher toolset is comprised of several components. Most notably, there's the Integration Flow Design tool and the runtime execution engines. The launcher allows for automatic processing of maps based on event triggers, either adapter events such as a file arriving, or time events as well as combinations of the two. Graphical tools provide real-time map execution status and diagnostic information. Okay, here we have my virtual environment where I have the Design Studio installed. I'm going to open up the Map Designer now, and you will see that I have one project called Test Project 1, and in there is one map. This map has two input cards, and in input card 1 it takes a sequence of text items, and input card 2 just takes a single text item. These are placed into the output XML. I shall show you the input card. It's over here on the right. Input 1, it's the four members of the band ABBA, and down underneath that you've got the output card, which shows the header, members of ABBA, which has been retrieved from input card 2, and the four members in their XML tags from input card 1. Okay, simple map, doesn't really do anything special apart from read the input and convert to uppercase. That's all I'm going to show you in Design Studio for now. This is the map I shall be using for most of the rest of the testing. Okay, now I'm going to fire up the Launcher Administrator just to show that I've done the bare minimum on the configuration side, just to show that I have added a user. I've called the user Mercator, and the deployment directories is already predefined with the default as the systems subdirectory. All the ports and everything else have remained the same. Oh, I did also put in a resource registry configuration file, but we won't be using the resource registry today. Okay, I'm going to fire up the Integration Flow Designer now and start a new document and add a map to it ready for deployment. So I'll fire up the tool, I choose File, New, it automatically gives it a name of System File 1. Within that there is a system called System 1. It's currently defined not to run on any server, so I'm going to change that first. I want it to run on the local server. The execution mode is Launcher and the platform is Microsoft Windows. Time to add a source map to the canvas. I browse to and pick the name of the source file that I created earlier in my workspace, which is test.mms, and then from within that I tick the test1 map and click OK. It says one map generated. If I double click that, it shows you that it has two input cards and one output card. If I float my mouse over those cards, it tells you the sources and target names. Now currently, if I was to deploy this, this would do nothing as I have not added a watch or a time trigger. So I'm going to add a watch now. I'm going to right click test 1 and choose edit launcher settings. I'm going to expand inputs in 1, get, source, and you'll see that it's looking for input1.txt, but the source event is currently turned off. I'm going to change that to on. So as defined, every time input 1 appears or is modified, this map will trigger. There are no deploy scripts defined at the moment, so I'm going to define one of those now. Add. I'm going to give it a name of default, and I need to tell it where to transfer the MSL file that is produced. This file needs to go into my Transformation Extender Systems subdirectory. Systems, and I'm going to call it system1.msl, the default that is chosen. That's fine. Okay, all I need to do now is execute that deploy script. I'm going to look at the deploy operation results. It says it's successful, but I'll just have a quick look at those. It says that it built one map. That's the map name there in test.mms. It found test1 and built it for me. It also built the system file to a temporary file, then transferred it to the correct location with the correct name, system1.msl. Let's close that for a moment, and I think for the moment we're finished with that file. I'll just minimize the integration flow designer. Before I move forward, there's one quick edit I want to make to the dtx.ini file, just to make sure we get enhanced launcher logging when we start it. I'm going to search for the string EWSC, and you'll note that there's a line that says launcher log equals EWSC, but there's a semicolon at the beginning, meaning that it's commented out. This is a very good log to activate to debug launcher startup problems. So I'm going to take that semicolon out and save the file. Next, I'm going to start the Services Windows applet and browse for the IBM WebSphere Transformation Extender 9.0.0 launcher service, and I'm going to fire that up. Okay, it says the service has started. Let's just have a quick look at the logs that were produced. There are 3 logs produced in the log subdirectory for this startup. 2 of them end with the word .log. We're not really interested in those for now. The compound system.txt is the most useful one. It gives you a summary of all the MSLs found, the maps found within those MSLs, and lets you know if those maps have triggers defined. As you can see here, my input 1 with a little t in brackets next to it means there's a trigger defined for input1.txt. And at the very bottom of the file it will tell you whether the startup was successful or not, and it says it's successful here. If we have a quick look at the timestamp for the output.xml file, you will note that it is 16:03, which is just a few seconds ago, just about a minute ago. When I started the service, it noted that the input.txt file was there, and this map has executed. It's kind of executed in the background, hasn't really given us the chance to have a visual see of anything happening. So I'm going to fire up the management console now and give you some information about how to monitor the health of the launcher and see which maps are executing. Okay, first of all I need to define a new entry. I'm just going to call it localhost, which I'm also going to use as the host name. I am going to pop in my username and password, and then right click that new entry that I've just created and choose connect. This will connect to the event server and display any systems found. It's found one system, one launcher, and it gives you a little summary there on the right telling you that it's running. It's found a history of successes. One map has run, total maps 1, there's been no failures. This is all good, this is all as expected. Let's just move that down to the toolbar for the moment. and we'll also fire up the launcher monitor. It's another tool that we can use to visually see maps executing. Looks like I've done all the definitions already because it's fired straight up, but I'll quickly show you the defining page. Again, I've given it the name of localhost, the server of localhost, put in the password information, and I would normally have had to click the connect button, but I've not had to here because it's already been predefined. Okay, so I'm going to just rearrange these windows on my screen so that we can see everything happening at once, hopefully. View tile. Okay, so we've got the launcher monitor running on the left there. We'll have the management console running here on the right. Gonna have to make that a bit bigger because it doesn't really tell us anything useful at the moment. There we go. Right, okay, and then in the bottom right I'm going to just temporarily make a quick change to the input text file that's my file trigger. I'm going to open it up in Notepad, and I am going to join the band ABBA, become the amazing 5th member of ABBA there. Okay, when I hit the X to close this file and it's prompted to save, you should note that there is a small green dot moving to the left on this panel, showing me that the map executed. There's a green line that extends from the start to the end time of the map. Because it runs so quickly, it only shows up as a tiny green dot. Over in the management console window, the history of successes has changed from 1 to 2. And you can see that the map has executed again. If I open up the XML file, you will see that I am now the 5th member of the band ABBA according to this XML. So there we go, one execution of a map based on a file trigger. I'd best save this file because we probably want to use it again. So let's just pop that in there. Users, IBM, ITX, workspace, test project 1, save, and all done. Okay, I'm going to fire up the integration flow designer again and pull up the document that we created just now. I'm going to make some modifications so that this system can be executed on a remote Linux server. The first thing to do is to actually add the server into the list of server definitions. I'm going to call the server RHEL73 and define it as a Linux Intel processor system. I'm going to add in the username and password so that the integration flow designer can FTP the relevant files directly to the system itself. Okay, for system 1, it's currently set to execute on local server. If I change that to RHEL73, you'll notice the execution mode stays as launcher, but the platform changes to Linux. 2 further changes to make. The first one is in the launcher settings. It's automatically got the map location based on the MMS, the source file. That was good enough for Windows. It's no good for us here now that we want to deploy to a remote machine, and specifically a remote Linux machine. So I will manually type in the location where I want this file to end up. I'm going to give it the .lnx extension just to keep things normal. Okay, home at Mercator Maps test1.lnx. That's good. The second change we need to make is to the deploy script. We need to change the location where the MSL gets deployed. So it's again /home/Mercator/ITX922/systems/system1. Okay, so the file name can remain the same, it's just the location that's going to change there. So if I close that and run that deploy script, it says it's successful, we'll have a quick look at the results there. Yes, the map was built successfully from test.mms. It found test1. It built the map for Linux, gave it test1.linux name, and then ported it to the correct name and location on my Linux box. And as before for Windows, it created the MSL file as a temp and then ported it over to the correct name and location on my Linux box. Okay, let's close that summary. Let's minimize the integration flow designer for the moment, and let's get a connection to the Linux box itself. Okay, I am going to change to the directory where the product is installed and run the mandatory setup script before I make any changes. I've already been in and pre-configured the launcher administrator with my usual Makata username password combo. I've also edited the dtx.ini file so that the additional logs get created. If we have a look here, the logs subdirectory is currently empty. This systems subdirectory will contain the one system1.msl file that I have just generated and has been ported across to this system. Okay, if I go into the logs subdirectory, as I say, it's empty at the moment. If I fire up the launcher with launcher.sh with the start flag, the launcher is started. If I have a look, there are 3 log files created as on the Windows system. The only one we're interested in is the one that ends with .txt, and at the bottom of that, after giving you a summary of the MSLs, maps and triggers and stuff, it tells you that the launcher has started successfully, which is great. Okay, I'm going to change to the location of the maps now, and I'll show you what we have in there. We have the map, the test1.lnx, that was ported over by the integration flow designer. I also have input2.txt ready for input card 2 of the map. I don't have an input1.txt at the moment because I didn't want the map to execute as soon as the launcher started. I wanted to show that there was no output.xml file. So if I now move the file input1.bak into the final name input1.txt and then list the contents again, you'll note that there is now an output.xml file, so I can be reasonably confident the map has executed. And if I have a look at the content of that file, you will see, let's try that again, you will see that the XML has a header of blur, and the data lines contain the members of the group blur. Damon, Graham, Alex and Dave there. Okay, if I make a small change to the input file, input1.txt, use the lovely VI word processor to make a small change here. And just like that, I join the ranks of the people in Blur. We have a look at the output XML file, and you'll now note that there is an extra data line which shows my name as being a member of Blur. Okay, so showing there that the launcher on Linux works pretty much the same as the launcher on Windows. There's a few extra things to change in the integration flow designer, but other than that, it's all pretty much the same thing. I could connect with the management console or the launcher monitor on Windows to my Linux box. I'm having some IP connectivity issues at the moment, so that's not working, so I can't show you that. I could fire up the management console in my Linux box itself, but I don't have an X-Windows environment on this Windows box to show any kind of graphical usage. So for now I'm just going to stop the launcher with launcher.sh and -stop, and that's going to shut down the launcher on my Linux box. which it has done. I can close that session. And I'm going to close my integration flow design document without saving those changes, as I shall want it back to the Windows settings for the next part of the demonstration. Okay, so we've come back to the Windows system again, and I'm going to fire up the integration flow designer and talk to you about another couple of features. First of which is wildcard triggering. So here we see on the input card we're triggering on the file name input1.txt. Any creation or update of that file, because the source event is on, that would trigger. So let's change that here to trigger star.in1. So any file that matches that specification will now trigger this map, and I'm going to set it to delete the file as well. Here's where the fun part starts. I'm going to change the input card 2 to be trigger /star.in2. What this means is that it has to exactly match the pattern of the triggered file, but end in .in2, and this file will also get deleted, but it's not a trigger itself. And on the output, I'm going to set it to change from a fixed length file to create a wildcarded output ending in .xml. Okay, so let's check. Yep, the launcher is currently stopped. I'm going to deploy those changes. I'm going to start the launcher. Oh, let's just check the logs directory first. Yes, that's empty. Okay, I'm going to start the launcher, and we switch to the logs folder, and you immediately see that there are 3 logs created, the only one of which we're interested in is the .txt, looking for successful at the bottom, which we have. Okay, close that. Now if I go into the trigger subdirectory of my test project 1, you'll note that I've got beetles.in1.bak and beetles.in2. Now the map hasn't triggered yet because there's nothing that matches the specific wildcard I put in star.in1. So what I'm going to do now is to rename this file, take the .back end off. Yes, I do want to change it, I'm quite sure. And immediately the 2 files disappear to be replaced with a beetles.xml. So we can be sure that the map actually executed, but let's have a look at the content of beetles.xml. It's got the Beetles from the in2 file and the 4 members of the Beetles from the in1 file. Okay, so if I was to create a jackson5.in2 and then create a jackson5.in1 file containing members of the Jacksons, you can be sure that this map would create a jackson5.xml file containing the names of the band members there. So that in a nutshell is wildcard triggering for you. Okay, let's stop the launcher and I'll show you the second thing that I wanted to show you, which is time-based triggering. I'm going to close the integration flow designer for a moment, so I'm not going to save that file, those changes. I'll just bring the same file straight back up again. So we're again triggering from a static file here, input card 1. There we go, it's still set for on. Let's change that to off. So the input card is still going to be reading input1.txt, but it's no longer going to trigger when that file changes. If I was to try and deploy this map now, as you can see there's no triggers on it, it wouldn't execute anything. So let's go and change the time event to on. The begin after is set to 000, so that means it's going to start straight away. And I'm going to trigger it every, let's see now, let's make it 10 seconds. So this map's going to execute from the start of the launcher every 10 seconds. and we OK those changes. You'll note that the icon now has a little clock underneath it instead of the pair of sunglasses. You can actually have both the clock and the sunglasses, where you have to coordinate the triggering because the time may come first or the file may arrive first, and there's all sorts of coordination options in the properties, launcher properties there. But for now, let's just deploy this change. Okay, that's deployed. Let's start up the launcher again, and if we move to the map directory where we have the input 1, input 2 files, this map is now currently triggering every 10 seconds. If we edit that file, we'll note that it's got members of ABBA and it's got 5 names in there, including my own. Now we all know I'm not actually a member of the supergroup ABBA, so let's edit the file and take out my name, leaving just the 4 original members in there. Let's close the input file. If we edit the XML file, you'll note that my name has been removed. This is not because the map triggered on the file changing, it's because one of those 10 seconds has elapsed and the map has executed. Let's fire up the launcher monitor here to show you the map triggering in a graphical way. I don't know if you can see on the screen there's a small green dot to indicate the map has executed, and then in another 10 seconds, there we go, just coming into view is another green dot, and there'll be that green dot every 10 seconds until the launcher is stopped. Let's see if I can make a change and try and catch it in between changes here. Let's put some rubbish in. There we go, and save that file and quickly go and look at the... Oh, I think I may have missed the target there. Let's have a look at the output XML. There we go, it's changed, but I don't know if that was my first or my second change there. Maybe I should have done a slightly bigger time window than 10 seconds, but anyway, you can see that it's running every 10 seconds anyway. Okay, and that's pretty much the end of the demonstration of wildcard and time-based triggering. Let's close all windows. In summary then, I gave an overview of the ITX launcher and how you would use the Integration Flow Designer component to deploy a system to the runtime execution engine. There followed a demonstration of running a simple event-based and time-based system. I also showed the use of the graphical tools to monitor the launcher activity. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch and listen to my presentation. It is my hope that you found this session both interesting and informative. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please follow me on Twitter for relevant tweets regarding product functionality, defect reports, and upcoming knowledge events.